Welcome to episode 16 of Tuning In with Bob Lancer and
Dr. Greg Nielsen, Dr. G, and I
Dr.
want to say thank you to all the viewers and listeners because we really appreciate you tuning in to tuning in.
And we hope that we help you to tune in a little bit better.
We hope so, and I
Yes.
know so. I know so.
Good, good,
Yeah,
good. So yeah,
yeah.
this show is for anyone who's just joining us for the first time. This is about focusing on the wisdom teachings called organics of our
Hmm.
teacher, who we studied with
Hmm.
back in the 1970s, very
Yes.
closely with one-on-one with Isidore Friedman.
Hmm.
And it seems to me that these are really the teachings for the times we're passing through. I call it how to pass through insane times in a sane way.
Yes. And of course, that leads right into Vitvan, who was a big proponent of sanity because he was into Korzybski, who wrote the book Science and Sanity,
Right. And that's
which,
what we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about the relationship between organics and
hmm,
advanced natural order, School of the Natural Order teachings.
yes.
I don't know that the school, the board, the school, I don't know that they're as aware of how intimate the connection is between Isidore and Vitvan, whereas we have a sense of it because we
Oh,
studied
yeah.
Isidore. I don't think that they have that sense of where Isidore seemed to make it functional.
Some of the, because I live in Nevada, and I've gone to the School of Natural Order in Baker, Nevada, which is across the state here. There were some older students who were very aware of Isidore and the
Right.
relationship with the school and the fact that he had his students read the books or suggest to read the books, buy the books, participate in the Vitvan teaching. But generally speaking, I think you're accurate there from what I can gather. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
And so it seems to me that Vitvan created sort of the overarching context in which
Hmm.
organics functions for conscious daily living.
That seems to be fairly accurate to me. And of course, Bitvan's, I mean, I think he started on his path back in what, 1910, I don't know,
Yeah.
20.
Mhm.
And of course, he reached a certain point when his son introduced general semantics to him, one of his sons, and it basically totally changed his path.
Yep.
And he studied with Korzybski
Mhm.
in Science and Sanity and altered all of his writings and rewrote a lot of his material or new material to be a little more structure, function, order.
Mhm.
Whereas Izzy, in my point of view, he really took it to the next level functionally.
Right.
Like, here's how you practice it with a using scientific language to
Mhm.
point the way.
Mhm.
That's how I would see it, more
Yeah,
or
sort of
less.
how to
Yeah.
how to integrate into the whole cosmic
Hmm.
process. Vitfin
Yeah.
gave us kind of an overarching view of what that cosmic process is. Isidore was so influenced by Vitfin that
Definitely.
he created a number of notebooks. Like this is one that he gave to me.
Oh,
You see
okay.
that it has my rising sign, my sun sign, my moon sign, and then he gave me a little bit of infinity for my soul.
All right.
What these are excerpts that he would copy by hand
Hmm.
from Vitfan's teachings. And I
Yeah.
have like 3 or 4 notebooks of
And
Vitfan's.
notice the serpent in the front, which is on the cover of the Wisdom book,
That's right.
because that was something he used on a regular basis for a lot of his notebooks.
Yep. And with the 3 sort of flame tongues
Hmm.
going up for the law of 3,
Yeah.
right?
I love the date, 2173. Hey, we're in February of what year is it? I'm getting
2025.
older. I forget what year it is now.
2025. Yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't even
2025. Yeah.
realize that. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Very nice.
Isidore would draw these images on his notebooks.
And of course, no doesn't mean no. Well, to know,
Right.
but also natural order.
Okay, so let's
Yeah.
go into it. What's your understanding of when Vitvan talks about the natural order, the school of the natural order? What is the natural order?
And of course, there's so many ways you and I can both, or lots of people could talk about it, but it basically is dealing with the energy as it is. And it can be in nature, in the natural order of nature. It could be natural order of learning, natural order of function, natural order of step by step and evolving into a more conscious person, human being, evolutionary kind of steps that you can go through if you so choose to go in that direction and being more mindful, practicing bare attention, going through some of the steps that Vitvan talks about, the first crossing, the second crossing, and so on.
That's a little broad brush right there.
Yeah, yeah.
But
So, and
well,
it's
how about you, Bob? Go ahead.
it's
Yeah,
interesting that Vitvan called it the natural order.
yeah,
He called it organics,
yeah.
and
They're
to me,
related.
yeah, they're somewhat synonymous. The
Hmm.
natural order process to me indicates that there is a sequence of steps involved in every process
Hmm.
that is aligned with the whole cosmic process.
Yeah.
And the whole cosmic process, as I understand it from Bitban's perspective, is that the universe is in process, in a natural process of giving birth to a higher level of human consciousness.
Hmm. I like that.
So the natural order
Yeah.
process is how we cooperate with what
Hmm.
the universe is up to in taking our consciousness up to a higher level.
Yeah, and Vitvan had three volumes, volume one, two, and three, on the natural order process. It relates exactly to what you just said.
Mhm.
And of course, you can go to the School of the Natural Order online, sno.org, and you
Mhm.
can see those books for sale right there.
And Vitfan's work is quite demanding intellectually,
Oh, yeah.
because he attempts to use such scientific rigor. His
Hmm.
aim, there are two levels to his aim, as far as I can tell. The
Hmm.
sort of ostensibly, and what the School of the Natural Order would talk about, is bringing the ageless wisdom teachings, the esoteric wisdom of the ages, up to date by presenting it in scientific language. So
Yes.
what his aim was that a scientist could read his work and find it indubitable. Like there's
Hmm.
no doubt this is legitimate stuff.
And you can check it out for yourself by investigating and following some of the things that he describes.
Mhm.
So yeah.
And then on a deeper level, though, I feel that even that attempt to couch everything in scientific language, on a deeper level, it's really just about his way of cooperating with the natural order process, that what he really was about
Hmm.
was contributing to our awakening to, first the energy level.
Hmm.
That's the first crossing.
Yeah.
And then as we stabilize in the energy level and spend enough time there, we go to the second crossing, which is
Hmm.
level of light. So
Yeah.
let's just talk a little bit about what it means to be oriented to the energy level, to make that first crossing. We talked about this in our first episode.
Oh yeah.
Into it
And it
now.
has,
So what does it mean to you to be oriented toward the energy level?
I'm going to go back to my own experience in being introduced to Vitvan by Isidore, Izzy, as we call him, and reading that a person to be functional on the energy level, one of the exercises to do that, to achieve that, was uh, everything is a configuration of energy and a dynamic energy system. Now, when I first read it, of course, I agree with that, and it sounds anybody would agree with
Basic
that. Who's
physics. It's physics, yeah.
But he said you have to be functional. You have to be grounded. You have to be experientially aligned with energy. You have to be conscious of your own energy and the energy in and around you.
Mhm.
So one day I finally realized, well, let me follow what he said. And in my own experience, it might be different for other people. I literally started touching, seeing, and experiencing everything as a configuration of energy units, and did my best to keep that up
So in
as
other words,
long as
you
possible.
told yourself, you reminded yourself, like
Yes.
holding up an object, this is the
Ex-
dynamic energy system,
Yep.
or holding up another object and saying, this is the dynamic energy system. And
Yep.
whatever you can point to, you state to your subconscious,
Hmm.
this is a dynamic energy system, so that the subconscious can awaken and say,
Yes.
oh, really? Okay, well, let's orient ourselves to that energy level.
Hmm.
And then the faculties, the subtle faculties for reading energy, registering energy, following energy.
And of course, then I began gradually, in my case, to feel the energy of a room, the energy of a person, the energy state that I'm in through self-observation. Uh, a story just popped in my mind when my son was about 5 years old. And of course, I had been transitioning more toward becoming an energy-oriented human being using organics and School of Natural Order and Bitvan. I asked my son when I picked up a crystal or gemstone I happened to have, and I said, well, what is this? His name's Dane. I think it's conscious. Don't you think so? He said, no, that's just a hard piece of nothing.
Hard piece of
So,
luck.
so he picked up my subconscious belief system, I think,
That's
from
right.
before. But
That's
that's
right.
how I grew up. Hard things are not energy. Yes, they
Right.
are. Science agrees. So
Now,
you
one of
see,
the techniques it seemed that
yeah.
Vitvan was using um, was the practice of conscious abstracting.
Ah,
If you read the transcript of his lessons, or you read
oh
any
yes.
books, a large percentage of every single class that he did would
Hmm.
repeat the conscious abstracting process,
Yes.
right? And
Oh
so,
yes.
so what do we mean by conscious abstracting? Because we've talked about this on the
Oh,
show, General
yeah. And
Stan,
of course, now we're referring to the Korzybski methodology,
right?
functional methodology in the book Science and Sanity.
Mhm,
And Vitvan adopted that, which was based on science.
mhm,
So when you're conscious of the abstracting process, I'm going to try to simplify it a little bit because
mhm.
there's many levels
Yeah.
that you can abstract to. But when you're using words or thinking in words or speaking in words, you're not on the nonverbal level. You're not on the silent. Vitvan called, I mean, Korzybski called silence on the nonverbal level,
With direct experience.
a direct experience, and you're abstracting consciously on that level. That's your first level. When you get to words and images, and you're not even in the present moment, you're someplace else. I mean, words have their place, certainly, not even a doubt. I mean, we're using words now. We're doing our best to describe to whoever's in the audience or in who's listening or watching to motivate them somewhat, or maybe they already are practicing this to reinforce the fact that being nonverbal, or as Izzy used to say, bare attention, is another word. You're getting closer to the conscious abstracting on the nonverbal level as opposed to verbal levels.
Right. So you're dealing directly with reality.
Yeah,
That and
energy world
reality is experienced primarily through feeling.
and the energy world.
The
And that was
energy
one of
world.
Bitfan's big teachings. You go through knowing, you go to knowing through feeling,
That's right.
and you're picking up the vibe or the energy. You're experiencing the feeling of the vibrations around you or with you or in you.
Right.
And you function according to that, not according to whatever's been sort of inculcated,
Right.
you know,
Dogma,
dogma.
ideologies,
Yeah,
even desires, right? We
yeah.
we make our decisions based on facts. So
Hmm.
what the first order of abstraction,
Hmm.
what we see and feel with our physical senses.
Hmm.
What we see, touch, hear, right? Smell, taste. That's a
Yeah.
first order abstraction because what's happening is our nervous system is not capable of registering the actual wavelengths and frequencies. Just like if you see a fan and you can
Good.
see the
Yeah.
blaze of the fan, but if the fan is moving quickly, it looks like it's invisible. And so what
And that.
happens is the dynamic energy process
Hmm.
is actually invisible. It's going
Hmm.
too quickly.
Yeah.
So remember that even when I'm looking at physical objects, I'm not looking at what it really is or what Vitkin would
Hmm.
say the thing in itself.
Yeah.
What I'm looking at is an abstraction, something taken from that. It
Mm.
goes through my nervous system, and then in my own consciousness, it produces the feeling of something being hard, for example,
Hmm. Hmm.
or the color red, for example. There is no
Hmm.
color red. It's a vibratory frequency that hits my optic nerve. And so people, and then it produces the color red in my mind. But people will say, well, that just sounds so academic. What's the point? Well, the point is
Yeah.
to awaken to the actual reality of the energy level where you can function by knowing rather
Hmm.
than by speculation.
Yeah. And of course, you don't function only by the five physical senses. Feeling, you don't see it. You feel it. And it's not like I'm picking up my feeling and holding it close to my body or something, you know.
Mhm.
It's so there are invisible sensory abilities that are not necessarily what we are taught to follow or integrate into our lives.
That's
I mean,
right.
obviously you have your physical senses, you're driving. I'm turning left, I'm not turning into the building, I'm turning down the street. Okay, fine. But there's also the energy world and the feelings that you can experience, it opens up a much vaster opportunity to be vastly more human, I guess you could
Well,
say. Yeah.
well, yeah. I mean, Korzybski calls it, that's how we humanize is through conscious abstracting. When we
Hmm.
don't use conscious abstracting, to some degree, we are functioning in an infantile and even a bestial manner.
Yeah, there's an excellent chapter in the Science and Sanity book on adult infantilism.
Hmm.
We don't have to go into that now, but if you ever get a when you get a chance and you look at that book, look at that chapter.
Izzy used to recommend that.
Oh
He
yeah, that
recommended that chapter
I've
over
used that
and over
chapter as a guideline in life,
again.
for myself and my interaction with others.
And then the problem with identifying what we perceive through our physical senses as the only reality, that led to what Vitvan called the objective manifold of values,
Yeah.
where it's all about material things. And
Hmm.
material things bring me happiness, right? And if
Yeah.
I don't get the material thing, it brings me unhappiness. And the more material things I have, the more successful I am. And
Yeah.
an orientation that takes us off of the energy path, and it's the energy path that really guides you along your true path, because your
Hmm.
true path is the path of empowerment and joy and liberation.
Yeah. And you tend to align yourself with that path with a sense of, there's lots of things besides this, but purpose is, you have a purpose, you have a function based on your structure that can evolve, but it's very fulfilling. It's very energizing. It's very helpful to yourself and others in a natural order way, which
Right.
is fantastic.
And
My son, go ahead, sorry. Yeah.
well, go ahead, your son.
Yeah, when he went to Pepperdine University, he had a teacher who was a very successful film director who made tens of millions of dollars. I'm making a very long story short. You could watch his documentary about his life change a documentary called I Am, where he moved into a $30 million mansion in Pasadena, and he was all living in it by himself, and got up one day and looked around and realized, I'm not happy. Money does not buy happiness. It's certainly part of our energy world to have money, to eat, to sleep, and so on. But he discovered through his personal experience there has to be more. And that's what happens when you uh,
Yeah,
become more conscious.
yeah. When you go through that disillusionment, when
Hmm.
when you go through the objective manifold of values and you discover that you're empty,
Yeah.
it didn't work. When we, not to discount the value of money or
Oh,
things,
no, no, no. Yeah.
but when you follow your own natural order process, which takes place on the energy level,
Yeah.
you can feel you're moving into empowerment rather
Hmm.
than moving into a drain.
Yeah.
You can feel yourself attracted to something because it raises your vibration, repelled by something because it lowers your vibration. And when you function at that level, whatever material means you need to fulfill your advancement in the evolutionary process, it's going to show up.
Hmm.
The universe supports that process. The universe is all about
Hmm.
the evolution of our consciousness. And as we follow the path that evolves our consciousness, we find all the support we need for all the fulfillment we want.
Yeah. You attract the people in your life like we attracted Izzy because we were making a transition in consciousness, our willingness to be open to other possibilities. So I was very grateful for that opportunity. And of course, to attract Vitvan and his wonderful teaching. I mean, you attract these wonderful opportunities to actually progress on your path.
Yes, yes.
It's
And just reading Vitvan, even before I could understand it, the
yeah,
energy itself was nurturing, empowering,
yes, you
inspiring.
could feel it.
You
Yeah,
could
it
feel it.
was
So the
very
first order of
powerful.
abstraction that Vitvan talks about, Korzybski talks about, is the thing is not the thing of itself. The object in and of itself, what we see with our senses, is a mere tiny, minuscule fraction of
Yeah,
aspects of the energy coordinates of that particular, whatever it is we're looking at. Then we go to the next level of
yeah,
abstraction, which is words,
yeah.
right? Words that can, if they're accurate, they can accurately describe something. They can
Hmm.
also be misused to mislead
Oh yeah.
individuals. I can tell you something that didn't happen and tell you it happened. And now, if you're not consciously abstracting, you automatically presume that you know that happened because
Hmm.
I told you it happened.
Hmm.
And that's where propaganda comes in.
Oh yeah.
right? The misuse of people's minds, which is
Yeah.
what Korzybski warned about. So
Hmm.
Vitvan spends a lot of time saying the word is not the thing, the map is not the territory. You can get a tremendous intellectual grasp of all these spiritual, metaphysical teachings and still function at a very low level and get very low level results in your life because you have all the words, you have all the
Yeah.
concepts, but you're not functioning consciously in the energy world.
Yeah, you can get, I understand why some people might do this because they're not aware yet, but they get duped by higher abstractions. And somebody can tell them how much they love them, how much they understand everything. Spirituality is so wonderful. These are all high order abstraction words. They're not functional.
Or they'll use words like immigrants or
Ah,
Democrats or
yeah,
Republicans
yeah.
or MAGA people
Mm,
and these are words that cover such a broad range of unique individualities
hmm.
that it's really not telling you anything. It
Right.
forms an idea in the unconscious person. It forms an idea. They think they know what they're talking about
Yeah.
because they're saying it with feelings of fear or anger. And so that evokes an image in the mind that they automatically identify and say, that's what's going on. I know because I see it in my mind.
I shouldn't laugh because I'm only laughing at myself, frankly, because this is where I came out of growing up in the Midwest with this sort of belief system. I didn't know the difference. I just figured that's the way things were. And that's what happens to some people. They get, I don't want to use the word duped, but, manipulated, programmed, propagandized, whatever you want to say. But as you come out of it, you start to know this is not accurate. You can feel it's not accurate.
Yeah, you can feel it on an
You
energy
can feel
level.
it.
You can actually feel that there's some confusion going on.
Hmm.
I find it interesting. People will tell me they'll watch the news to find out what's happening. And I tell them the only thing you know what's happening when you watch the news is what the news is doing.
Yeah.
You don't know what the news is talking about.
I
You
don't
just
know if
get words.
you remember what's his name? Walter Cronkite. Do you happen to remember him?
Sure.
What, 50, 60, 70, something like that? And he was in his broadcast. I think even
That's
Bitban
the
brought
way it
this up.
is.
That's the way it is. And when I read that and I heard him say it, I
Right.
said, it's not the way it is.
Right. That's the issue of identity. There, that is not the way it is.
It's
Exactly.
the is of
Whatever
identity.
opinion, what's the way it was, but right now it's new.
I did a little investigating in that just to find out a little background where that might have come from. Apparently, his producer tried to attempted to tell him not to say that because that's not 20 minutes of news on CBS is not the way it is. So even he knew that,
Right.
but it was a sign off thing that he used, and
Yeah, yeah.
it was like a signature.
But
Yeah,
it's important to recognize when you're getting into conscious abstract, you're okay,
yeah.
words second order abstraction. I know I'm being told this. I
Hmm.
don't know if what I'm being told is an accurate perception of the facts.
Yeah,
All now I can guess it is, I can presume it is, but I don't know it is.
yeah.
And one of the maybe core aspects of Vitvan's teachings as well as Isidore's organics is it's leading us into the faculty of gnosis,
Hmm.
faculty of knowing,
Yeah.
what Vitvan calls connecting with the mind level,
Hmm.
seeing in noetic light, a whole nother level of consciousness where you feel, see, and know. We called it perceptive. I don't remember if he called it perceptive cognition or if Isidore called it
Yeah.
perceptive
Well, I know
cognition.
the Greek philosophers used to, that was a translation from them. They would say perceptive cognition. I can't pronounce the Greek, but that was something they used well, it's the English translation of Greek philosophy words.
Right. So
It's a direct
know,
knowing, gnosis. Yeah, gnosis. Yeah.
and so when you're consciously abstracting, you can know that you're receiving words,
Hmm.
but you also realize I don't know what these words represent.
Hmm.
It can be a complete fiction. I don't know what the words represent. I know I'm getting words. I know
Yeah.
they evoke certain images and thoughts in my mind.
Hmm.
This is what's going on in Ukraine. This is what's going on in Washington, D.C. This is what's going on in, Tom Cruise's bedroom. But I don't know. All I know,
Oh, I didn't know you knew about
is-
that.
all I know is that I'm being told something,
Yeah.
right? I'm being
Exactly.
told. Now, how many times have people get ripped off in business or get disappointed in relationships? You said you'd be there,
Hmm.
didn't show up. Well,
Yeah.
I said it, but I couldn't know I'd be there.
Hmm.
This could come up. It's possible I won't make it. And if you are aware that you're just getting words, it's not that you doubt what people say automatically.
Oh, no. Yeah.
Prepared for the surprise. The
Yeah.
X factor, as Isidore would say. You're telling me you'll be there. I know you may not be there.
Hmm.
Just words. It's your best effort to tell me
It's
what's.
a map. It's a map. Yeah. And a map is not the territory, according to Korzybski. And of course, Vitvan repeated that often. And you just realize that whatever's going through your mind, usually, you don't want to over identify. You want to go by the energy. And so even when I am quiet sometimes and the chitter chatter of the mind, this random stuff will come popping through there. You go, generally speaking, I go, what? I mean, come on. I mean, whatever. I'm just going to let it go, let it go, let it go, because energy follows attention. And if you're going to keep giving attention to something and give it value, we're the value givers, but Van talked about being the value giver, then you may tend to go along with the delusion or the first and second order abstraction level instead of the nonverbal energy level.
Yeah, and when it goes down to the objective manifold of values, people might like work really, really hard to make more money, let's say for their family or for themselves.
Hmm. Yeah.
And because they're objectively identified, it's like, well, I'm just going after what I need. I'm going after what I want. But when you're on the energy level, it's, well, how are you going for it? And what
Hmm.
is it doing to you? What is the effect of what you're doing to yourself, to other people, as you
Yeah.
pursue this objective thing? So
Yeah.
getting into the present moment experience of, well, this doesn't feel really good. This feels off. This feels wrong.
Yeah.
So if somebody tells you they're gonna like do something for you, right? When they're telling you that and you've observed them, you can get a sense of, I think I'm gonna take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah. Quite often that happens in my life. I'll have people, and quite often they sound like they really mean it when they say it,
Yeah,
but I'll get the feeling like
yeah,
take that with a grain of salt.
that's
We'll
right.
s- we'll have to see, you know.
Yeah,
It may or may not happen based
that's
on
right.
past experience. Quite often it doesn't. But
That's
past experience, quite often it does, but still that's past. That's not present. So,
That's right. So if someone says they're going to do something and
mhm.
they don't do it, and I sort of set myself up to count on them doing it, my first internal response was, well, they betrayed me. Really
Yeah.
happened is I betrayed myself by counting too much on what they said.
Hmm.
Doesn't mean I don't count at all on what they said, but I am prepared
Yeah.
psychologically
Yeah.
that it may or may not happen. They may or may not follow through.
Yes.
All right.
I have a very similar experience and more and more functioning according to what you just said, which is very liberating, frankly. And it puts you more in the moment as opposed to projecting into the future or focusing on the past. And as the moment approaches when somebody says something, you may find out that it's going to work out more or less according to plan,
Mhm.
or it may not happen at all,
That's right.
or some
And
other degree in
it's
between.
up to us to be
Yeah.
responsible for
Yes.
how we handle that. If
Yeah.
we put all of our trust into what somebody says and it doesn't happen, well, why did we put all of our trust in it? It was just words. We didn't know. Maybe
Yeah.
we couldn't know. And maybe very often we had a feeling it wasn't going to happen when they told us it was going to happen.
That
The
does
energy
happen.
level was
Yeah.
speaking to us.
That's a wonderful thing because when you can begin you can call it intuition if you want, knowing by direct perception. You know things that aren't necessarily apparent by the five physical senses, which are wonderful tools too, but your intuition becomes sharper and clearer. So your direct knowing or direct perception informs you how to navigate the energy world, more or less. I mean, you don't want to get too fixated, but if you go from moment to moment, you start to see, feel, know, and you progress that way. I know, like for example, today I had plans, but I tend to have too many plans for my day. But I felt the energy at about a certain point and saying, no, let's put that aside for another day. This one thing I want to, it's actually working on Izzy's next book that it's coming out with.
said, there's no rush. Let's use the principles of organics and how I prepare to get this book out. So just let it go. Let it go.
Rather
And the
than being
time,
objectively identified with the product
yes.
of the book, you're
Yep.
following the energy. I need a break. I can't
Yep.
work too hard. I need my energy to be at a high level.
Yes, I want to be bringing quality attention in the moment to the editing and publishing process as much as I can because I'm practicing organics in the School of the Natural Order Teachings of Vitvan, which once I did that, my day just opened up like a flower. It was fantastic.
Well, also the energy you're putting into the project is going to be at a
Mm.
high level
Oh, yeah.
that people
Yeah.
are going to feel when they connect to it
Hmm.
because the energy
And
that goes into it.
I
So,
know sometimes,
yep.
sorry about that. I'm
So
just
the
going to
next,
say,
okay,
go ahead.
you say first. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll
You
go.
have the stars behind you. You're the star.
Oh, yeah. There's two of them there. Well, there's two of us, two stars.
That's right.
Anyway, uh, I'm not going to explain the stars why they're there. I thought to change the background on my. Anyway, I'm explaining it. Anyway,
The people
so
who study with me, they know the five-pointed star represents mastery. So
there you go.
yeah,
But yes, so what was I talking about?
I have no idea. But
I
where I
was
was going to
unconscious.
go, where I
Go
was going
ahead.
to go was into inference, the third
Yeah,
level of abstraction.
yeah.
Okay. So someone tells you something, then what happens is your response, if you have any understanding, it's inferential understanding.
Hmm.
You're not making a presumption. They say my couch is broken.
Yeah.
You get an image of a broken couch and you say, oh, you mean one of the legs is damaged? And he says, no, the whole thing caved in.
Hmm.
Oh, so my initial inference was incorrect.
Hmm.
So we
There you
check
go.
our inferences. When someone tells us something, we say, okay, well, is this what you're talking about? Is this what you're referring to? Right? Or
Right.
they tell me they're going to be somewhere, I infer that they're
Hmm.
actually planning on being there rather than setting me up for something.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So the inferential level. Now, when we look at the objective manifold of values, we look at the inferential level of abstract and we realize however people are responding to our words right now, it's somewhat intuitive on an energy level. These are
Hmm.
the people who've been studying this work, but it's also inferential. They're just imagining, well, this must be what he means, right?
Hmm. Hmm. We have our associations
Yep.
based on past experience or not any experience, even just something that
Imagination.
randomly comes through your mind. Yeah.
And so, perhaps my favorite Vitvan book is his book called The Problem of Good and Evil.
Yeah.
One of the main themes of that, and it's interesting, that's kind of a rework. He wrote a book before he got involved in general semantics.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
and his name was at that point Ralph de Witt.
Yes.
He changed his name to Vitvan, which in Latin means one who knows.
Yeah.
He was the spiritual teacher as Ralph
Hmm.
de Witt, and he wrote a beautiful, beautiful book called Universal Will.
Yeah. I have a
Yeah.
copy of that.
I have
Yeah.
a copy of that too. I was given
Yeah.
that gift from the School of the Natural Order.
Uh-huh.
And it's so interesting to see how the problem of good and evil is like a semantic rework of universal will. And the
Yes.
main theme of that book is that as we get onto the energy level and we get closer and closer to the light,
Hmm.
functioning as energy beings, one of the things we have the capacity to awaken to is what's called the true will. For each individual, there's a universal will for the whole universe of where it's heading, the cosmic process, the natural order process of giving birth to the Christos, which we could talk about in a while.
Hmm.
But the universal will is each of us has within us a compelling point of intention. In Kabbalah, it's called Kether, the crown,
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
divine will.
Hmm.
Can learn to tune into that will, unite with that will, and follow that will into splendor. Whereas when we depart from that will, that's when the problems start to hit us.
Yeah. Yeah. We're not in the moment anymore at that point.
Uh-huh.
We're not in the present. There's a lot of ways to put it, but yeah,
Present of what we call the true self, right? So
yep.
when we talk about the true self, now we go into Vitvan's teachings of the tripartite man state.
Hmm.
Remember the tripartite state? So we have the three levels. We have
Hmm.
the configuration of units of the physiological organism.
Yeah.
My physical vehicles, not who I am. It's the physical vehicle through which I function on the earth.
Hmm.
Then we have the psychic nature,
Hmm.
the personality, which is also not who I am.
Mm-hmm.
Personality, my true self is incarnated into that personality, lives through that personality, but I can change that personality to align with my true will,
Mm-hmm.
and it being automatically programmed by my social environment and my upbringing. That was a key part of Vitvan's teachings.
Oh yeah. I mean, that was right one of the core repetitive statements, writings, whatever you want, his teachings that he would give his weekly lecture many times. I mean, for many years. In fact, I think the School of the Natural Order has those recordings. If ever you want to hear directly what he has to say, there's, I think there's several hundred of them,
And the
which
wild way he says it, because
yeah, and
like
I've
a
listened to most of
barn
them.
burner, like a preacher barn burner. Yeah.
Yeah, he really is very clear and
And
concise about what he says, but he's very firm and direct.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So we have the thinking process, the intellectual process, and then we have the cognitive perception, the knowing level, the
Mm-hmm.
gnosis. And eventually what happens is we awaken to what Vitvan calls light's regions,
Mm-hmm.
where we
Yeah.
know at a much higher level, a much broader level. And Vitfan's, it seems to me that a little shift in between Vitvan and Isidore is it's all orientation toward the birth of the Christos, the birth of the
Yeah.
within us. When
Mm-hmm.
we awaken to that noetic level, it's like this pneumatic ovum, this egg opens up, and we are born as a divine being. And
Mm-hmm.
it's all about orientation to that. Whereas Isidore, while that is his overarching orientation, it's his really focus is on conscious daily living, conscious
Yeah.
functioning.
Yeah, and from that, I know we've talked about this before too, but I go along with it. I see the results of being able to put things in practice in different situations. The value to me is that it seems to stimulate my internal evolution and growth because I have more opportunities to try to put this into practice in a variety of situations, whether it's with hanging out with people or it's a public location or a difficult problem in the daily life. How can you navigate it using the principles we're talking about and the skills we're talking about? So it was more, I guess, I like to call it living the two worlds at the same time.
Hmm.
Two worlds, 200%. You're integrating both rhythmically. You're drawing on that connection to the crown or the higher frequencies, the will. At the same time, you're literally in the everyday life, bringing that energy through as much as you can
Right.
in the moment.
Bringing it into conscious function.
Yeah,
So we
conscious
could
function.
actually be guided by the energy level in
Hmm.
our conversations and what we eat, where we choose to go, who we choose to hang out with, what we read. We're
Hmm.
guided by the energy level, which ultimately leads us to what it's really all about. But the natural order process of the universe, the cosmic process, is all about the evolution of consciousness into what Wittgenstein would call the Christed state,
Hmm.
anointed
Yeah.
state, where this higher power is flowing through us.
Hmm.
Um, in at the school, they focus on things like breathing techniques
Yeah.
and oming
The
and
yeah, the
study,
Om.
right?
Hmm. Right.
But where we focus in our daily living is on living in the present moment,
Yeah.
consciously understanding how my thoughts function, so I
Hmm.
can use my thoughts instead of being abused by my thoughts,
Hmm.
understanding how emotion affects me and affects my situation. So I remember the day, for some reason, every now and then there are things that Isidore said that just stick with me like I heard him today. And
Yeah.
I remember the time and I had no understanding of what he meant, but he said, your emotions are a tool.
Mm.
Emotions are tools. You're not your emotion. Your emotions are tools. Now, we can identify with an emotion. So, well, I am angry, right?
Mm.
Or we can realize, well, what is the usefulness of anger in this context?
Yeah.
How angry
Con
should I, right?
yeah, conscious anger is not really anger. It's an energy that you're utilizing in a particular situation. So you
Right.
might have to be firm about something, but you're not going to use a cannon to kill a fly. It's going to
Right.
be a measured use of that emotion in a certain situation.
Right. And you're not gonna lose who you truly are. So Vitvan's definition of who we truly are is the power with which we are conscious.
Mhm, mhm,
Right? That's Vitvan's definition of the true self. So we have the physical vehicle, we have the personality vehicle. Personality is two. You don't talk the same way to a 4-year-old as you talk to a 44-year-old.
mhm.
Your personality to make a connection.
Yeah.
And the true self is the power to be conscious, which utilizes these three to function in line with the true will, what you're
Mhm,
truly meant to be doing. And you have the capacity to awaken to that. And
mhm.
that capacity is awakened through the study and practice of the natural order teachings.
I like the way you put that, Bob.
Okay,
That works.
thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
that really works. Yeah.
Just only
Very
50
clear.
years of study, you know.
Very clear to me. But
Yeah,
and I'm hoping that more and more people
yeah.
move toward clarity with some of the material that we're sharing. Yeah.
They are. That's the
Yeah.
feedback I'm getting. People are
That's
really
great.
on the show. They love our energy. They can tell the
Yeah.
love we have for each other,
Mm.
the joy we have. That's all energy.
Yeah.
All energy.
And there's another reason you could say for someone to be in the everyday life along with connecting to the inner life. So it's not just mystical or only spiritual or retreating from reality, so to speak. Although sometimes you need to retreat a bit here and there.
Yeah.
But by doing that, you're bringing that, you're emanating that energy, you're broadcasting the energy, you're sharing the energy. It does, you start to see changes around you in people, situations, events, circumstances. You start to draw different kinds of people to you that need to hear or want to share with you and learn from you or whatever you want to say there, or want some guidelines and helpful hints and tips.
Well, I think
And
that's the nature of our times, is that what used to be used, these wisdom teachings that used to be used for those who just wanted to aspire to a higher consciousness and close
Mhm,
to God. Now, these wisdom teachings are for how to live sanely,
mhm,
handle all the energy that's going around us, all the verbiage, all the words and the stories and the reports that are going on around, and not identifying with that,
yeah,
realizing that your state is sacrosanct. You
mhm.
be in that peace and poise and perception on the nonverbal level to find your way, right?
You really mentioned this identification, which is a very core thing in the teachings of both about everyone that's evolved, let's put it that way. But Vitvan for sure, Korzybski, the is of identity, the habitual identification with a certain belief, a certain attitude, a certain memory, a certain or identification with your a nonverbal
Mhm.
energy world,
Yeah. Yeah.
which
Well,
is very revitalizing. Yeah.
well, the practice of disidentifying what the word is comes from the fact that by the time you tell me what it isn't
Mm.
that way anymore.
Yeah,
It might
that's so
appear
true.
that way to my
Yeah.
physical senses, like it hasn't changed, right?
Yeah.
But the reality is that whatever you tell me it is, it already isn't.
hmm
That's already gone.
Yeah, yeah, it's like putting the hand in the river, you know.
Right.
You're never touching the river in the same place. It's
That's
always moving past or through. Yeah.
right. So the now is forever changing. Orienting to the energy level helps us notice the changes. So that, for
hmm
example, if I'm a parent, I'm not talking to my kid as he was yesterday,
hmm
talking to him as he is right now, and I can make a good connection right now with him. But if I'm
Yeah.
talking to him as he was, based on my idea of him, there's a
hmm
disconnect. He's
Yeah.
frustrated. He becomes rebellious, unhappy, feels lonely.
Yeah. Well, and you're bringing up some wonderful things that we apply from the organic education methodology that Izzy brought up. You can create a lesson or a plan, but quite often you get to the point where you're in the moment and you can scrap the plan, or you can modify it, or you can find out what's going on with that person, and you may just say, that's not going to work right now. It's not
Oh,
functional.
I made
Yeah.
that blunder, when I was doing a lot of public speaking, and if I had
hmm
like two events in one day, because of a big group, So the first group wow, it was really clicking and they were getting it and I was inspired. And I said, I'm going to say the exact same thing next group. And it
Yeah.
was flat.
No. The energy completely different. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I've had a lot of experiences with that. And of course, I'm always continuously learning that readjust. You can make some plans, but then adjust. You walk into the space, you feel the stem, space, time, energy, matter, and you change it completely. And I try to come in with a variety of possibilities so I can make adjustments if necessary. So sometimes it's structured, the plan is really kind of attuned to the moment, and other times it's not. So, and there's all degrees in between.
Well, the way Ralph Waldo Emerson said it, he said, consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds. He said, if I say this today and I say the opposite tomorrow, that's okay,
Hmm.
because I'm just telling you the way it is. So, because I want to make sure we can cover this
Oh,
aspect.
yeah.
One of
Okay.
the things I think, maybe one of the biggest impacts I think Vitvan had on Isidore
Ah,
was the aspect of rapport,
yes.
rapports.
Yeah.
Vitvan has this lovely booklet called Healing Technique.
Yes.
It's all about rapports. What,
Hmm.
what what do you have to say about rapports?
And we brought this up before, but when you're more, well, even when you're not energy oriented, but as you become more energy sensitive, you tend to pick up vibes, energies on different levels. It could be sometimes I got them in the back of the neck. It could be pressure here. Could be congestion there. It could be like a pressure here. Could be stabbing pains, and give me some variety. These are sympathetic vibrations that you're picking up on. It's not necessarily a physical ailment. In fact, I mentioned to somebody once, well, I'm getting a headache. And I said, well, why don't you not identify with the fact that you're getting a headache? And maybe do a little rhythmic breathing or just letting it go. Within seconds, it was gone.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying that's true for everyone all the time,
Oh,
but
but
in that context, that was a sympathetic vibration. And quite often, you'll have people who are thinking about you, and maybe it's not very positive, or maybe they're having a difficult time in their life and you're close to them. Maybe it's a family or a close friend. You're picking up the resonant vibration of another person, place, or event of
right.
some kind. Yeah. And you're registering it as a frequency within your energy body or your psyche.
Mhm.
And is that what you're talking about?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And we've talked about you have to learn how to navigate through that through transmuting the energy.
Well, the first thing is it's possible to recognize it.
Oh, yeah.
It's possible to recognize who's thinking about you because they keep coming into your mind.
Hmm.
And if the thought of that person attunes you to the energy of that person, or if someone's just radiating, your son, where does your son live?
He lives in Southern California.
Okay, so he's in
Yeah.
Southern California, you're in Reno.
Hmm.
If he's going through something stressful, it's entirely possible that you'll feel some anxiety without him
Yes,
even telling you about it,
absolutely. And,
right?
it happened with my mom, my dad, my sister, people that
So,
we,
so we
yeah.
pick up on those frequencies.
Hmm.
Now, if that energy pattern that you're picking up is not harmonious for you,
Hmm.
it can produce an illness.
Yeah.
Because illness, as Vitvan talks about, Korzybski talks about, it starts on what we call the colloidal level.
Hmm.
Colloidal level is that point where the energy and the physiology kind of meet.
Hmm.
So an energy pattern, a discordant energy pattern, turns into some kind of a discordant physiological pattern.
Oh,
And
yeah.
become quite ill, even more serious than that, you can die.
Oh, yeah.
Accident, all kinds of stuff can happen just because of the way someone is thinking about you, feeling about you, or because you have this sympathetic rapport connection with what they're going through. You can have a friend who's going through some financial insecurity. You have all
Hmm.
the money in the world, but for some reason you're scared about your finances.
Yeah.
And it can
Yeah.
happen, it can happen with strangers. I remember once I was sitting in a waiting room, totally
Hmm.
calm, reading, very centered, everything nice. And all of a sudden I'm feeling like this anxiousness.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
look up from my book, and there's this guy pacing back and forth,
Hmm. Hmm.
totally anxious. You could see it. and I was
Oh,
getting
yeah.
caught up in his vibration. Once I realized that, I was able to disconnect from it. And I even
Yeah.
made a decision, I'm going to walk outside, close the door, take a breath, cleanse myself like this.
Hmm.
Imagine closing the door, close the door in the rapport, come back in,
Yeah.
and it was better.
Yeah, this is a really major key is someone who's becoming or gone through the first crossing and developing those skills on the energy level. Because your intellect or your mental identifications can say, well, I've had people say, oh, that's not possible. In fact, I said to one woman once, years, maybe 20, many years ago, uh, gosh, I don't know what's going on. I said, your mom's thinking about you. No, that's bullshit. So, well, I have a quarter. Why don't you call her right now and see how she's doing? And she called her and said, oh my God, she's going through a
Wow.
major, major issue.
Wow.
And it broke that objective identification a bit for
Right,
this particular person. She realized that it's possible.
right.
A lot of people don't believe that's possible. When you bring it up, it's like, what? That's bullshit,
And
or whatever.
a lot of doctors don't believe it's possible.
No,
So
not
they'll
at
treat
all.
you for an illness that's not even yours.
Yeah. That is funny.
Yeah.
That could be a stand-up routine right there.
Well, I remember, one of the stories that been told was how one of his students or clients at one point, uh,
Yeah.
their baby was coming down with colic.
Yeah.
He explained to them it's because of the fighting that's going on between the parents. That inharmonious frequency, that inharmonious energy pattern
Yeah.
is inharmonious for the child, and it's causing the problems with the child.
Interesting. When I read that, I think it was a Vitvan book or something like that, or a tape that he had. I actually asked my mom, was I a colic baby by any chance?
Hmm.
She said, yes. How'd you know that? Absolutely. Then I found out there was a tremendous anger and hostility and argumentation going on between the father and mother. And of course, I
Yeah,
had no memory of it, but I just randomly asked her based on that story, and it did help me to be aware of that.
after I read that story, I remembered that as a little kid, I used to have a lot of tummy aches,
Yeah,
right? That lower
there you
chakra
go.
would get all
Yep.
messed up. So another orientation of Vitfans is working with the chakra system.
Oh, yes.
He
Yeah.
would talk about getting established in the north half,
Hmm.
above the solar plexus chakra.
Yeah.
The north half is where you can experience the sweetness and light, where you can
Hmm.
experience the harmony and the bliss and the joy
Yeah.
of life. And
Yeah.
in that harmony and bliss and joy of life, you're emanating harmonious frequencies.
Hmm.
It's good for the body. Then people who are in rapport with you are uplifted by your radiance.
Hmm.
In the East, they call it Shakti.
Yeah. And a lot of times they want to be around you more
Right.
because they feel good after, during and after. They kind of get an afterglow or after energy. Some of that feeling I got being around Izzy. I mean, wow, okay, I've been kind of wiped out here this week, but I'm coming over to visit and get a nice lesson. And after about an hour of that, you're walking around feeling, oh, this is feeling great.
But
I think
Izzy
I'll come
also
back.
warned, and Vitvan warns as well,
Yeah.
that it can also have a high vibratory resonance, can also have the opposite effect on someone they want to kill you,
Yeah, you have to. That's
right?
one thing I know Izzy used to talk to me about that. You have to measure your energy level to the circumstance. And he used, hopefully I've got this right. He used the word to me, you need to know how to go consciously unconscious.
Hmm.
You're not really unconscious, but it's like a dimmer switch.
You're
You
pretending.
turn, yeah, you're not getting so conscious that it irritates other people to the point where they, like you say, they're hostile.
Yeah, too much
They're
stuff is coming up inside of them.
yeah, they don't like you all of a sudden. He's weird. He's
And Vitvan
crazy.
talked about, he called it keeping the funny party going.
Yeah,
That
okay.
means that when you're out there,
Hmm.
be of good cheer, be jovial, be kidding
Yeah.
around, don't be too serious.
No, no.
Helps people be at ease with the higher frequency that you might be emanating.
Avoid proselytizing by all means. It's,
Well, he
whatever.
said that too. Vitvan
Yeah,
would say, don't try to change a person to
no,
go on to this path. Let them live out the path they're on. I
exactly.
applied this to parenting, and it worked beautifully. You
Hmm.
let them act out the path that they're on. You never have to oppose them. You know, if
Yeah.
like I'll be talking to someone, I'll say, well, maybe you're being a little too hard on your kid. And they'll say,
Yeah.
oh, no, this is just the way you have to be. And I say, okay, fine. And then all I'll suggest is I'll just say, just pay attention to the results you're getting
Hmm.
to see if you're on the right path or not. But never try to force another person to your way of thinking, to your
Yeah.
perspective, or to your path.
That gets back to, organic teaching, but, school of the natural order teaching. You're not trying to ram it down people's throat. You're basically just sharing and then letting it go wherever it wants to.
Let them act. Everybody has to fulfill Vitvan's teachings.
Yeah.
Everybody has to fulfill their level to get to
Hmm.
the next level.
Yeah.
So there's no better or worse. There's, in a sense, there's no higher or lower. You know,
Yeah.
someone who's out there, they just want to make money, and they don't care if they steal it. They could steal it from their own mother, and this is the path they want to. Let them act it out. Let them go through the process, and
Yeah.
then they also will come to the point of awakening and realize
And,
that doesn't actually work.
and that's what I'm talking about when that teacher of my son, after all the tens of millions of dollars, woke up one day and found out this is a dead end. So he was able to begin a transition at that point. Money was not going to be satisfying. Things and materialism wasn't going to work. He was miserable.
So if you had a, as we close, if you had a
Yeah.
Vitfams
Mhm.
that you were going to recommend to a beginner,
Yeah.
what would you recommend that they go to?
A couple of things I had in mind. One was the Vitvan and American Master biography. I don't know if
Okay.
have you read that?
Oh, yes.
And is my email down in the comments?
Yes.
If anybody wants a digital copy of it, just email me and I'll send it to you. Okay. Now that's an very bare bone introductory. And he said it's not Vitvan. That's not truly Vitvan. It's his teachings. So I also brought out a book that recently came out, recent to me in the last couple of years. They call it A Beginner's Course, the School of the Natural Order. You can see it here. I'm not saying it's the only book,
Oh,
Expanding States Self-Awareness.
expanding states of self-awareness.
And
Yes.
they call it a beginner's course. They often, a beginner, they'll recommend it. But there's many, many other things. But
Well,
I would recommend,
uh,
yeah,
my first one was Perceptive Insight.
yeah,
And then he also has a little booklet, which is a little booklet. He also has a
yeah,
booklet called The Dawn of a New Day,
hmm,
which is what
yes,
all these teachings are coming out right now,
yeah,
because in this Aquarian age that we're entering, this energy world natural order process is going to be sort of the order of the day. It's the
hmm,
orientation of the human race, this
yeah,
reorientation of the human race toward the Christos, not toward the
hmm.
historical Christ, but toward
No,
the
no,
state of identification with the true self.
sure. It's a consciousness state. You evolve through different states, like growing from a baby into a toddler into a young child, young child into a teen. It's an organic process, and it's just a natural order.
That's right. And
And that starts to,
there's a special frequency, a special energy field that
mhm.
I've always felt whenever I tune into the School of the Natural Order. There's just a
Yeah.
wonderful frequency. So, Greg, here we are at the end of
Oh
episode
my gosh.
16, which was we went through Vitvan to, for a
Hey,
beginning, you know,
it's sweet 16. Hey, we're moving on here.
16.
We got
So,
17 coming up.
closing words to our
I'm going to go
audience.
back and say what I've said the last couple of times. Practice, practice, practice. If you're drawn to something we've discussed or we've suggested to read from organics or from Bitvan, take the time to practice it, try it, do it, stick with it, give it a full test drive, rather than saying, I don't have time. And if you catch yourself forgetting to do it, that's okay. Do it again. Pick up where you left off and renew and try it the next day or the next hour or the next minute. But I'm going to say practice, 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 because that makes the difference.
I remember something, I'll close with something
Yeah.
Isidore used to say. To me, he said the first skill is, or strength is when you get knocked down, get up, dust yourself off, and go again.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
with those words, I want to thank you, Dr. G, Greg, brother in light, as always.
Yes.
Until number 17.
All power to all of us. the
Uh,
with the great power.
Okay,
Yeah.
great power.
All righty.
Feelings, and we'll see you next time.
Adios, amigo.
Adios. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.